The opinions expressed by Peter Wexler, Robert Quittner, Kyle Plotkin, Michael Hart, Nicholas Hamner, and guests on this show are their own and do not reflect the opinions of this network. All statements and opinions expressed are based upon information considered reliable, although it should not be relied upon as such. Any statements or opinions are subject to change without notice. Investments involve risk and, unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Past performance cannot be used as an indicator to determine future results. Any strategies mentioned may not be suitable for everyone. Information expressed does not take into account your specific situation or objectives and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for you. Before acting on any information mentioned, please consult with a qualified tax or investment advisor to determine if it is suitable for your specific situation. This program is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information with regard to the subjects covered. Investment advisory services offered through Brookstone Capital Management LLC, aka BCM, a registered investment advisor. BCM and Franklin Retirement Solutions are independent of each other. Insurance products and services are not offered through BCM but are offered and sold through individually licensed and appointed agents.
Hello and welcome everybody to Solving the Retirement Puzzle. That is the podcast produced by Franklin Retirement Solutions, and we are all advisors with Franklin Retirement Solutions. I am Nicholas Hamner. With me today, as they are every week, are Michael Hart and Kyle Plotkin. Franklin Retirement Solutions is a retirement and income planning financial planner in Horsham, Pennsylvania. If you have any questions on your retirement, getting ready to retire, or having just retired, you want to give us a call with those questions and see if we can help you out. 215-657-9200 or info@franklinrs.com. Like we do every week, we're going to just discuss some topical things that we've seen that relate to finance, relate to retirement, relate to anything that has to do with retirement planning. I think this week we are all financially motivated. I think that's we're all talking about financial things and what we think the markets will do or what the market is doing. I'm going to start, and I'm only saying this because I only picked this because of CNN stacking both these articles one on top of the other, and I thought it was a nice dichotomy: consumer belief and market behavior. Do consumers think the market's doing well? What impact does that have? If consumers think the market's not doing well, what impact does that have? And so I'm starting off, you guys probably have heard about this, and anybody watching out there has very likely heard about this because it gets brought up every 6 to 8 months. It's called the lipstick index. You guys know what the lipstick index is?
I've heard of it.
So back post 9/11, we had the recession, and President of Estee Lauder then commented on the fact that a lot more women were buying bright lipstick. The thought being that in times of economic struggle, in times of uncertainty, you're more likely to treat yourself to something bold that is a little bit of a luxury. And so a tube of red lipstick for a lot of women then was considered a small luxury.
Hmm.
Lipstick sales went up. And then he called it the lipstick index. So then, of course, with that hot button word there, with that sound bite out there, people went back and looked, and yeah, during the Great Depression, cosmetic sales went up. After Black Tuesday in the 80s, cosmetic sales went up. So now anytime cosmetic sales go up, people start looking for the economic uncertainty around it because, well, the index exists. Well, it's not really a real index, but it's something to, just it's a soundbite. It's something for people to talk about. In COVID, there was an uptick, but it was more on self-care. So instead of lipstick that everybody could see, well, now you're wearing a mask, or most people were wearing masks. I don't think most of the people not wearing masks and angrily not wearing their mask were not wearing lipstick. But during COVID, they started calling it the moisturizer index.
Hmm.
So I bring that up, and CNN was talking about it because right now in the first quarter of 2024, cosmetics are up 9%. Sephora sales, which, Sephora, if you don't know what Sephora is, you're a very lucky person. If you do know what Sephora is, high-end cosmetics at the consumer level, If you ever wanted to pay $25 for a tube of lip gloss, there you go. Chapstick at Walmart is $1, but nope, let's go to Sephora and spend way too much on it. That's what that is.
They
So,
do have nice shopping bags, though.
oh, the black and white, yeah. Everybody knows you went to Sephora.
Well, that's why you get it.
I think it's like, in South Korea, there was the trend of going to Starbucks and getting the biggest cup, but the smallest beverage inside that cup. I think now with Sephora, it's what is the smallest thing I can buy to get the biggest bag?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, if you ever want to see heads turn, go to Sephora with your significant other. Like, if Steph and I go in, and I'll just say, even though no, it's not true. I'll just say, hey, get what you want, and the head just.
It kind of reminds me of a funny story. If my wife is listening, I never did this, but I heard a story about guys who would go to Tiffany's and buy the Tiffany keychain, which is still, outrageously priced. It's like $100 for this silly keychain, but it comes in the
In the Tiffany
Tiffany's
box,
box.
yeah.
And then you go to, K Jewelers or wherever, and you buy the regular jewelry, but you stick it in the Tiffany's box. Again, I never did that. I'd like to make it clear that this was a story I heard from someone else.
I've heard of people doing this with, say, Honeycrisp apples versus buying the regular Red Delicious, and they just change the sticker on there to save themselves $1.
See, that's different. That's pre-sale. That's technically theft. That's like the tag swapping at like the thrift store, or even places that still do physical price tags. Popping tags and doing different things like that.
Well, not to get off on a tangent, but I saw an article, or no, actually it was a podcast episode about self-checkout and people taking shrimp at the self-checkout and changing it to bananas because it's all based on weight.
Yeah.
And like they were losing thousands of dollars.
Well, you're doing their job, so it's just a way to get paid for it.
Well, and that's kind of what the podcast was all about, like how much bad will is out there for self-checkouts now.
Right. So if you're watching, please do not see this as we are not condoning theft or shoplifting or anything illegal. We are just discussing in hypotheticals how people are beating the system. So yes, according to the lipstick index, we may be up for economic downtimes because cosmetic sales are up and cosmetic retailers are posting record sales. However, the article directly underneath it discusses the latest results from the Fed survey of consumer expectations. And so again, we're testing consumers this time a little more officially. These are the consumers that don't delete the email or don't immediately hit end on their phone when they see unknown caller come up on their cell phone. Respondents who expect finances to stay the same or be better in a year's time, 78.1%. So that is an overwhelming majority of people who are answering the survey who think better economic times are ahead. Respondents who believe the market would be higher in a year, 40.5. Again, a very large group of people thinking the market's going to be higher, and that would be the highest percentage there since May of 2021.
Didn't we cover like a week or two ago how like 60% of the people thought that we were in a recession and the
coming
market
back
was down?
to that.
Okay.
So is consumer mindset an accurate indicator of market performance or economic performance? Should we be listening to the people? I mean, yes, in a democratic society, the people have a voice, and that's very good. But in terms of something as nuanced as the economy and economics and finances, do we use these grassroots indicators as anything supportive?
Well, it's an interesting question because it's one of those things where people will say that, and then if you change the question and ask them,
Oh, yeah.
okay, so you're pessimistic, so are you taking all the money in your 401k and going to cash? And often the answer is no. So even though they have a belief, I wouldn't be surprised to find out that they never actually act on that belief.
Well,
And so
there's also going to be sampling bias too.
Mhm.
Like,
Again, who are you getting when
Right.
you're getting
Right.
the people who are actively picking up on that unknown
well,
call?
30 years ago, they would call you at dinner time and everybody would just answer their home phone sitting
Mhm.
around with their family eating spaghetti. But now, yeah, it's possible spam or whatever that thing your phone comes up. Nobody answers that. And the people that do answer that, it's probably a very small percentage, and I don't think it's necessarily representative of the whole.
Right.
So your sample size or your sample population, I don't think on any of these surveys you've seen. And that's why I think a lot of these, and not to get off tangent, but a lot of the polls you're seeing on the presidential election, I don't put much stock in them at all, because who are they polling?
Right.
And who's responding to these polls, and how biased are the questions one way or another? You have no idea.
Well, think about the people you know, and think about the people you know who aren't busy and have time to kill. Are those people you are trusting with any kind of advice?
Usually not.
Exactly. So that's it. So really just, and I do have the stats from that Harris Guardian poll that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, where, we're 56% of those thought the U.S. was in a recession, and we're not. 72% had said inflation was increasing. It's been going down since 2022. And then half of them thought the S&P was down. It's not. Half of them thought unemployment was at an all-time high. We're at the lowest point in unemployment since the 60s. So public perception is not reality. Maybe what and we talked then about what do we think the reality is? What is the reality to them? And is the market indicative of real life? But also, really, these surveys aren't all worth a whole heck of a lot, because who are they getting? So that's my spiel.
Yeah, well, and how many times have we? I mean, I know I can speak personally. I've met with at least a handful of clients who we start off and hey, how's everything going? And the response is, I'd be doing great if the market was doing better.
And the market's doing great.
And then and then
within reason.
Yeah, and then we pull up their statement and we're like, okay, you were at X on January 1st.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're at Y. So when you say better, what are we talking about here?
They're not millionaires overnight. They haven't retired with $50 in their pocket and somehow become a millionaire overnight.
No, but what happened is they went through their week and they bought groceries and they had a meal out,
Mm-hmm.
and all of a sudden, where they used to have $100 left over, they have 30 or 50. So to them, things are going terribly. Which, listen, I get it. I feel the same way, but that's not statistical reality on the average, as opposed to what typical people are feeling.
Well, yeah, it's facts versus feelings, right?
It is. And we go over the emotional cycle of investing and what triggers people to get out of the market, what triggers people to get back in, timing the market twice. If you think bad times are ahead based on some survey that gives you the result, that gives you the information you want to hear, not necessarily what is true, but what you want to hear and what you're feeling, you react on that. Well, are you acting on the best information? And that's always an important metric when you are investing, when you are managing your money, is acting on reality, not on belief, doing the things that are right. And if you have issues with that, if you have questions about that, you want to give us a call at 215-657-9200, or reach out to us at info@franklinrs.com. We can talk about that, get you on the right path as it comes to market and investment risk. So Kyle, talking about market investment risk, let's talk about one of the big names that has been in the stock market back and forth, just in the market news, just because of how it rose to prominence. Let's talk about GameStop.
GameStop, yes. So I think, first of all, before we get into that, just GameStop as a business model at this point hasn't. I don't know that it's really necessarily viable in the long term. And
probably not. Everything going to digital distribution for video game. Because if you don't know what GameStop is a small retail chain store. They take up maybe 1,500 square foot in a strip center, and they sell video games, video game accessories, and now they've branched out into like pop culture stuff.
My stepson loves going in there.
Of course, as we all did when we were kids. But it's a video game store. Video game consoles, as they advance generation to generation, they are becoming more online only. You just download the game. You don't have to have a physical CD. The days of cartridges are long gone. But yes, so GameStop is a struggling retailer anyway, but they rose to prominence when a big firm went and shorted them, and then all these individual investors chimed in, bought the stock, held, became kind of what they call it, a meme stock.
Meme stock, yeah. So the first thing I wanted to just throw out there is they reported a net loss last quarter of $32.2 million
Okay.
compared to a net loss of 50.5 million in the year ago period. So it hasn't
Mhm.
gotten really any better.
Mm-mm. But it
Um,
hasn't gotten worse.
Sales fell 28% from last year at this time, from 1.2 billion to 881 million. So again, not doing well short term, long term business model, who knows? Um, but so the one thing you're hearing about in the stock market, first of all, you see the stock price on GameStop. It's
Mhm.
been all over the place. It was kind of like baseline in the high teens, low 20s. All of a sudden, it shot through the roof. It closed one day last week. I think it was at like 64 and change.
Okay.
So what happened? Well, there's a group, I think it was on Reddit originally, like maybe in 2021, I think.
I forget when all this started, but yeah, it was pretty big on Reddit.
So there's somebody on Reddit named Roaring Kitty.
That's a person you want to follow if ever there was a name. I want to follow Roaring Kitty. That's the person I'm taking my advice from.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yeah. So Roaring Kitty posted on Reddit that he had a big position in GameStop all of a sudden, like 3 weeks ago. And what he posted was that he was holding, he had 12, or he had he bought call options
Mm-hmm.
to buy 12 million shares at $20 a share. Basically, a call option is you can buy this thing. It's the derivatives market. That's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And what that means is it's a derivative of a stock. So it's something peripheral having to do with the stock rather than actual shares. So basically, what you would do is you would buy an options contract from somebody or from a company, broker dealer, whatever, to be able to buy X amount of shares. Usually they're sold in lots of 100.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, there's a set price. So he bought them at $20 a share, which means that, and they last for like a month. So
Yep.
he said he had these options contracts that were expiring, I think it's June 21st, at $20 a share. So what he would want to do is to bump up that stock price, because let's say the stock price goes up to $40. Well, he has purchased the right to now buy them at yesterday's price at
Mm-hmm.
$20 a share. In addition, he had a big position, I forget, something like $15 million worth of shares, I think. And I'm sorry, 5 million shares worth $124 million. So he was holding this big position. And I think the whole point was to really try to pump up the market, pump up the stock price,
Pump it so he could
so
dump
that
it.
he can go and get the shares and then dump them and make a quick profit. Well, that's what happened like 3 years ago, but it was this whole Reddit group and all these people jumped in, and it was GameStop went up some crazy multiple of, I don't know, thousands of percent.
Right.
And kind of the same thing happened with AMC stock, on a lesser scale.
Mm-hmm.
But that's happened again. We're kind of in the middle of it. Right now, this Roaring Kitty, he bought these 5 million shares for 106 million. Right now, they're worth 124. And his call options, he's made so far 13 million on them. Who knows if it finishes in the money, which means that when they expire, he's going to make money. But what it did to the stock price, that's the real
Yeah.
story here. So on May 10th, stock price closed $17.46. This all happened on May 14th. The stock opened at 64.
Okay.
Closed that day at 48. So it closed to close 2 days was up 179%. 3 days later, it had dropped down to 22,
Mm-hmm.
loss of 54%. Kind of stayed in that same neighborhood. All of a sudden, there was another post about it. I think it was a YouTube live stream of some sort that this Roaring Kitty did. And then the price shot up another 76% in 2 days. 1 day later, it dropped another 39. So it's been all over the place.
Right. So the lesson I'm seeing here isn't so much about GameStop. It's about where you get your information and who is Roaring Kitty? Because one of the things about Reddit is it's anonymous. You don't know who's behind that username. Who is Roaring Kitty? What are their motivations? What impact are they able to have? We've seen it with Twitter falsely reporting someone said this or someone died. And then if they were involved with the company, that stock tanks or whatever. information that has no validity, no source, nothing can still impact the market, at least on the short term, and create a lot of volatility. For what? I mean, who's behind it? What are their reasons? It's critical thinking 101, but we've seen with the market, things move too fast for people to really think critically.
Yeah, I mean, if for a stock to go from, what do we say, 18 up to, or 17 up to 64
And
in
then back
in
down
the
to
span of a
22 in
day,
3 days.
yeah, I mean, it's insane, and
Yeah.
it's just people. And originally, it was this whole thing, supposedly, a couple years ago, where they were trying to see if they could, you know, manipulate the stock price, and if they could make a little bit of money or a lot of money in a short period of time, while kind of screwing over the people who were holding that stock for the
Yeah.
long term. That was kind of the point of it, just to say, hey, we know that banks and financial institutions and whoever are kind of cooking the market. This is our way of fighting back.
Yeah.
And okay,
And that
agree or
wouldn't work.
disagree, but there's at least there was kind of a point to it, or a bigger, like, philosophical reason behind it. At this point, other than this guy trying to make a quick buck.
Yeah, that's what this really reads like, is now we've just got people using Reddit to manipulate the market for their own personal gain.
Yes. And listen, if it was a company like Apple, where there's, I don't know, some crazy amount, millions or billions of shares that are out there, it would have less of an impact. But for a smaller company like GameStop, who doesn't have a huge market cap, a little bit of interest like this, as we've seen, can spike it and make the stock do insane things in a very short period of time. So the lesson here is, I don't know if there's a lesson, but really, just be careful. Be careful. You see things in the news, just another little quick thing. You'll read something in, let's say, Barron's magazine, and it'll say, oh, buy this fund. This fund's doing great. It's supposed to this and that, and it's up 34% in the last quarter or whatever. Well, by the time it makes it into Barron's magazine, a lot of this stuff has already happened.
Yeah.
So it's not looking forward, it's looking backwards, and all of a sudden this stock price, or this mutual fund price is pumped up because it's done well. Well, now you're going to have all these people jump in to try to buy it when it's already high, because there was this article that came out, and it's a dangerous game to play.
Well, I think with Kiplinger's, with Barron's, especially with Reddit, this is information you're accessing. Well, I know Barron's, you have to have a subscription, but Kiplinger's puts a lot of their information out for free. Reddit is free, and there's really no such thing as a free lunch. You're not going to get quality advice at any level. You're not going to get anything you should take as actionable for free, this podcast included. You need to be, if you are not confident in your own data sources, and really, there's nothing in the media I would take as a confident source. Everyone has an angle. Everything has a reason. It's not out there. There is no beneficial. What's the word I'm looking for? I've completely blanked on the word. Nobody's doing this for the public benefit. If there's information out there, it is for a reason.
Follow the money.
Yes.
No, and I'll just say, nobody has a crystal ball. I mean, how many calls were we on with different institutional investors and everything going into 2022? And I mean, to the letter, every single one of them had said,
this was going into 23.
Or going into 2023, every single one of them had said we're going to have a rocky run for probably the first 6 months, and then things will start to calm down. And nothing could have been further from the truth. Every single one of them were completely wrong. And then you look at this year, where in the beginning of the year they were calling for how many rate cuts?
7.
Right. And now we're at
1.
Maybe 1.
Maybe 1. So it just goes to show that nobody knows. Nobody has a crystal ball, and that's why you really don't want to focus on short-term trends, but really long-term trends.
Well, and if somebody does know, if they do put it out, let's just say theoretically somebody could have a crystal ball and know. Even if they put that information out there, they've already made their trade upon that.
Exactly.
They're giving that information to you secondhand, which already kind of changes the whole picture, because it's already been manipulated. So just be careful of your sources, be careful where you're getting information, think critically about it,
Absolutely.
and try to make a well-rounded decision.
All right, and with that, we will move on to Mike.
Yeah, so I pulled an article from the Wall Street Journal, pretty interesting. And before I get into it, I'll just ask both of you guys, do you carry cash?
I do not, because cash to me is free money and I will burn through it in a second. I have to go on if I use my card, I know that card is accessing my bank. I know there's money in that bank, and I know that using that card is taking money from my account in the bank. Cash?
That's interesting. You're the opposite of most people because most people they're using their debit card. It doesn't hurt because to them they're just I'm swiping a card. But when they pay with cash and they see the money actually leave their hands, that typically hurts more. So that's interesting.
Cash is free money for me. I don't.
See, the debit card is free money for my wife.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I accidentally use cash. So like if there's a reason where I have to go and get cash, say, my son's got like the bookmobile at school or something, and I have to go and I grab $60 and I give him 30 of it, I'll have $30 in cash. But I'll carry that around for months and not even really realize I have it. If I stop into Wawa for a coffee, maybe I'll throw $3 at them in cash just because it's there. But right now, I think I have $1 in my wallet, maybe, and it's probably been that way for at least a couple of weeks.
Okay, interesting. So I tend to carry a decent amount of cash, but I try to never use it. But I just got so tired of, walking into a random coffee place and them not taking cards that I was just like, I'm gonna make sure I have some cash. I always have some cash in the house, so my wife, is going to get her hair done or her nails done. She has money to tip, or if we order pizza.
Oh no, I look for the stickers on the door, or I look for the machine at the counter. If I don't see stickers, if I don't see the machine, I just turn around.
I pay for most things through my phone at this point.
I use my watch. I'll do the Apple Pay on the watch, but I'll still use my card on occasion, but there has to be a card reader.
Gotcha. So, Yankee Stadium, and I can also MetLife Stadium. I was there recently. They are cash free now.
Okay.
So the way this works is if you want to buy something and you don't have a debit card, they actually have these things now called reverse ATMs, where you put the cash into the reverse ATM and it spits out a prepaid debit card. And of course, because it's an ATM of sorts, there's a fee involved. So now, whereas it used to be you'd go into, a shop or a store, if you wanted to use your credit card or your debit card, there was typically a surcharge, especially if it was under a certain amount. Now there's a charge if you want to use cash. And, there's a couple of reasons for that. Obviously, one of them being that if you don't have cash, it's a little bit harder to get robbed.
Yeah.
So if you're a cashless business, there's really nothing for anybody to go in and take. But one of the problems that they're having is that the consumer doesn't necessarily know that this prepaid debit card can be used anywhere. So you get a prepaid debit card for $100, you go to the concession stand and you spend, 50, and you're like, well, I have to spend the rest of this before I get out of here. So now you buy $50 more worth of stuff that you wouldn't have bought anyway. And so it's sort of like an unseen tax to the consumer.
Yeah.
But Six Flags, Great Adventure, which is not far from us here, is doing the same thing. So they're going completely cashless. So I just thought that was an interesting story.
Does it speed up the lines?
I would think so. I mean, that's one of the reasons I hate using cash is I hate the process of making change and then, getting it all organized in my wallet at some point. And like I said, I always have cash, but I try to never spend it.
Well, I just remember Six Flags, the lines were bad for food. And then at Hershey, I remember walking into Hershey and looking at the first food stall and thinking, wow, they sell beer at a family theme park? That's kind of off. And then we're at the back end of the park after a full day in there. I'm waiting in an endless line just to get bad chicken tenders and fries. And I'm like, that beer makes sense now. So if this speeds up the line, if this gets stuff done quicker, again, pay attention. Know you can use it elsewhere or bring your own debit card.
I mean, another angle from the perspective of the store too is it does take time and effort to count that cash.
Oh yeah.
and then deal with that cash, band it up, take it to the bank, whatever. And then you're dealing with having to get rolls of coins, which is a huge pain. So I get it. And it will reduce, the amount of just counting mistakes.
Mm-hmm. Counting mistakes, forgeries, all
Yeah,
sorts of
yeah.
stuff.
I mean,
Yep.
you're working, people working in a
Counterfeiting.
7-Eleven, somebody just grabs the 20 out of the register. You don't think about it. And, those things get cut down on.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
going to increase the chances of somebody coming up with a way to defraud these systems. Credit card systems, we already have skimmers. We already have people somehow gaming prepaid credit cards and reusing those before the money hits. I've never been sure how that happens, but I've heard people complain about it.
Yeah, well,
But
Kyle, we were actually talking about this, and so you think about like you go to a baseball game and the stadium is cashless, right? But
mhm,
you have the guys who are walking around selling the cotton candy or
mhm.
selling the beer. So are you then taking your debit card and passing it down the row of people?
No, you get up. You
I-
get up. You go over. The kid's got a little like a little mobile clover
Right,
deal.
Yeah,
Or
but
square.
you're in
but
the middle of the
previously
row.
nobody would get up and walk all the way over there and then do that.
Look, I have seen
you'd
the
pass the 20 down the row. The guy would give you the hot dogs, and then you'd pass the
I,
hot dogs
I
back.
remember the days of like the little foam ball with the zipper, and you would toss it back and forth like that. But that was at a Braves game. That was years ago. But no, you get up, you go, you buy. The sections aren't huge.
What if they are? Somewhere I used to be a beer man. I was a beer in college. I used to work beer man at the Redskins games, and there was a whole bunch of us that would do it.
Commanders,
Sorry, the
I was gonna say
Commanders.
football team.
Yeah, yeah.
Washington football team.
So I in that disaster of a stadium, by the way, that was before they
Yeah.
reduced the capacity from like 90,000 that they couldn't fill anyway. And the stadium's ugly, by the way. But long story short, that's got to cut into the tips that these people earn too, because if it's a debit card, you're gonna have to either they're just gonna swipe it for 2 beers, $18, whatever it is.
Mhm.
Usually, if it's a 20, you just say, all right, keep the $2. But with a debit card, that's not going to happen.
Right.
So, I'm
Well,
wondering if that's even hurting, the people walking around selling stuff at this point. It
Well,
certainly could be.
you're either charging a mandatory gratuity or you're giving that scanner device that ubiquitous by now tipping screen with the insane tipping amounts. Oh, do you want to tip your guy 25, 35, or 85?
Well,
Well,
and like at Starbucks now, they do it in a very underhanded way. Like you go
it's
through.
going to ask you a question.
Yep, exactly. You hand them the card at the drive-through, and they go, "This is just gonna ask you a question," and then they walk away,
Uh-huh.
and you're just like,
Did you see the one that taped over the non? So
"No."
one place had taped over their screen where you could not tap the none. You had to tap a tip percentage.
Oh man.
Which I mean, yeah, that tipping is a whole other topic that we should address one of these days.
Yeah, we
But
should cover that next
I
week.
don't think we're gonna make any friends by discussing the tipping controversy anymore. But we do need
There
to
was
wrap
some
it up.
news on that the other day too,
I'm
but we're not going to
sure.
get into that.
No, we will. Let's make next week the tipping episode.
All right.
But until then, we got to get to next week. So thank you for watching Solving the Retirement Puzzle. We will be back next week. Hope you enjoyed this episode. We'll see you again.